Hi, today I'm going to teach you a little bit about the WebSpeechAPI. The WebSpeechAPI is a native client API that's built into your browser and allows you to do a couple of things related to speech and voice with any type of web application you may have. One of the cool things about the WebSpeechAPI is that it uses your operating system's recognition software or APIs, however you want to describe it, to translate text to voice and voice to text. So for the Mac operating system, it uses dictation or Siri. I'm not sure exactly what variant that's on. For iOS, it's Siri, Windows, Cortana, and etc., depending on whatever device operating system you're using. There's two main interfaces with the WebSpeechAPI that most people use. There's the web speech recognition part, which is simply taking any type of words that you're saying and turning that into a recognizable text and string that you can then manipulate and do with what you want. Then there's speech synthesis, which is kind of the reverse, where it takes a word and is able to translate into a human voice. And you're able to modify the language that's being used, the speed at what is being said. So that could have some uses as well. As mentioned before, this is kind of a relatively new technology, so it's kind of in, we could say, in beta mode. A lot of features of it may not work, and as you can see here, not all browsers currently support it. So Chrome and Edge both currently support it. Firefox, with some modifications, can also, and changing some settings within your advanced settings, can also allow it to work. But we can see that Safari doesn't support it currently. Internet Explorer obviously is kind of going the way of the wayside, so it doesn't support it. And for mobile devices, it's essentially those same three browsers that are able to support the API. So for the simple demonstration that I'm going to show today, I got my information from the Mozilla Developer Network. They have an awesome little documentation on this API, as well as a simple little example app that I'm going to use just to kind of show you some of the different elements of the API. Again, a big reminder that you need to use a compliant browser, otherwise this won't work. And another big reminder that this is still in beta mode. So even Mozilla mentions on their documentation that many aspects and functions of this API may not always work correctly because it is still being used. So just keep that in mind. Before we get started, I just wanted to show briefly this kind of in the wild, and I'm not positive that Google uses this API, but I'm sure they use something similar, and it kind of shows how, especially with voice becoming a big part of today's applications, this could become useful. So many of you have probably already seen this, but in this corner we have a search by voice on the Google homepage. If we click on this, it can instantly see that I am typing or talking, and we're able to get a search out of that. So with this WebSpeechAPI, you could do something similar to this on your own web application. So let's go over to the code and kind of see what we're working with. So we have a simple HTML page, not too much to report. It has a couple of divs, metadata, reference to our script that we're going to use, and then some classes onto the elements, which will be used to output some additional HTML within the script. Try to go through this and be somewhat explanatory, but if you want to learn more, just search for this on WebSpeechAPI. Mozilla Developer Network has some awesome documentation. So to start with, we need to import some different objects from our client, which we are doing right here. And then we have two variables that we're creating right here, which are kind of important. We first have this array of different colors that we want to be able to use with this app. And as you can see, they're all listed out. There's more. I won't show all of them. And what we do with those colors is in this next variable called grammar. Now, this grammar variable has a couple of things, a couple of specifications or settings that will be used once we actually create an object. We have this part right here, which refers to the actual grammar we're using, it's called Java Speech Grammar, and from what I can tell, this essentially tells the machine how to recognize our speech, as far as the order the words come in, how they're spelled. But I'm sure with some more diving in, you could get even more detailed explanation. This next part refers to the actual terms that we want to have the machine recognize. So we're deeming this to be a color term. And this next part refers to rules. So we want this to be a public rule that is available to all. This is all a little bit kind of technical. Don't necessarily understand all of it. Just know that you need all these parts. And this last part says that in addition to any colors that the machine may recognize, we want to make sure that it recognizes these words as colors. So whatever list of colors it has, we want to make sure these are also in here too. So that's why this is being joined at the end. The next part of this process is actually creating our objects. So we have a speech recognition object, which contains several methods. We're also creating a speech grammar list object. And within that speech grammar list object, we want to take all these grammar settings and insert them in, as you can see right here. Again, I'm kind of going through this fast, so if there's some parts that I skip, it's all listed online and you can get a better explanation there too, probably. So we're inserting this grammar, all these settings into this speech grammar list object, and then we actually want to insert the speech grammar list object as a variable within the speech recognition variable, as we're doing right here, so that it knows it can process this information and use it when it's making a selection. There's also a couple of other settings that could be used within the object. We have a setting that sets the actual language that's being used, which can be useful to just help eliminate any weird translations that may happen. We have this interim results variable, which is where you can actually ask the API or this object to return any type of thoughts it basically has as it's translating your voice dictations. So if you want to kind of see how it's thinking, you could have that being returned. And this max alternatives refers to simply different words that maybe the machine says, oh, if I can't really recognize that you pronounce green, maybe I think it could be good or something like that. However, we're pretty confident that they'll be able to translate the colors, so we're just going to leave this at 1. But you could technically have it return others. And as you'll see, it gives us kind of a confidence of how well it thinks it's doing. This next part is essentially just doing some simple manipulation of the document for adding HTML and manipulating the HTML based on this process that's happening. So I won't go too much into that, but it should be pretty self-explanatory if you just look at it. On to the actual API and some of its methods. So this has been set up so that when any type of on-click is done on the body, a function is triggered. And within that function, we have the object calling a method called start. And when this start is called, it eventually will, essentially what it will do is it'll tell the client to turn on the microphone and start listening and processing information that is being spoken to the machine. So you'll see that here in a second. There's another method or an event called onResult. And essentially what happens is once it recognizes some words, this is triggered, and we just need to tell it what to do with it once it recognizes words. So within our function, what we have it doing is taking the object or the event. We want to get the last word that the last kind of recording that it recognized, which is what's happening right here. And within that recording, we want to get the last word or the word that was recognized within that recording. So that's kind of a simple explanation of the hierarchy to access the actual text that we want to be able to use. After that's been done, simply we're going to take that color, that word that's been translated from the voice through these methods, we want to be able to insert it into this HTML, which is processed. And what's going to happen for us is we're going to change the background color to match the color that's translated from this text. I'll show you in a second too, but there's this thing called confidence, which shows the level of confidence that the machine has in the word that it translates. So I'll show that if we have time, but that's what's happening here. It's console log. Once that's been done, and kind of the talking's stopped, or it's been able to translate this, we would simply want to stop recording. We don't want to continue to listen for new words until we decide to click. There's a couple of handlers, kind of error handlers here. This on air happens if something goes wrong with trying to record. This on no match is supposed to happen with any types of words that doesn't recognize that don't match the color that we've given it. But as you'll see, it doesn't necessarily give that thing back. So like I said, it's in beta, not necessarily functioning. Last thing before I kind of demonstrate this, just kind of a word of caution. I figured this out when I was trying to test it out early. The WebSpeechAPI is similar to jQuery in that you cannot have it function on a static page for security reasons. And so in order to have this work, you must be hosting it on some type of local server or obviously online on the web. So if you're having troubles and you're trying to figure out why it's not working, that's probably the case. So we'll go ahead and get this. I just created a simple note server. And I'll get that fired up so we can show our example. So we'll come back over here. And here's our simple web app. So have all the words listed out, and right here we'll kind of have a status that shows the color that was dictated or what was translated. So I guess it could be the word, as we'll see in a second. So simply all I have to do is click. As you can see here, it's going red. And it translated that. It didn't give us an error warning, which I said is kind of a bug right now, but you can see that it translated the text and kind of went through that process. And since it wasn't a color that it recognized from the list of colors that we gave it, it did not change the background. So let's try that again, and let's actually use one of these colors here that was given the array that we gave it. So let's just go with green. So I'm going to click on it. Green. And we can see that as soon as it recognized the word green and matched it with the color, immediately stopped recording. Our recording symbol was gone, and it changed the background. Let's do one more. Purple. And did the same exact thing. So as you can see, it works fairly good. A couple of bugs. Let's go ahead and just look at the console. As you can see here, we have a couple of console logs that are showing it exactly what's happening behind the scenes. Navy. So this confidence is listing out how closely it thinks the word is related to what we said at the words that I found. We can see that's a pretty high confidence. Some of them are a little bit lower, but that's another good thing that you can look at to see if you're kind of concerned or confused about why something's not working that well. So that's a little overview of the WebSpeechAPI. I think it'll become a even bigger and more prominent technology as time goes on, and I think we'll be seeing this a lot more in our web development apps. Again, if you have any curiosity or want to look into this more, Mozilla Developer Network, search for WebSpeechAPI, and you can download this app and play around with it yourself, or learn more about how this API works.